I just walked into every store that had a shop front. And I was like, hey, you need Facebook ads. The best thing I'd say when it comes to starting a business or an agency is, so the only skill that you need to go from 0 to 10K a month is one thing, which is I effed up in that. So I can tell you wholeheartedly, if I just focused on one thing, I would have got from 0 to 10 in probably a quarter of the time. When it comes from going from 10K a month to 50K a month, and I was on this vicious cycle because I actually felt the most lonely and depressed I'd ever felt. But in order to find the right girl, you're gonna have to build yourself up into a man who's worthy of her in the first place.
Because this is a big topic for people that are starting out. They're putting in the work day to day. No one's buying from them. Can't seem to sign any clients. Their videos are getting 5 views. Why, in anyone's right mind, should they keep pursuing something that they see that's not working? Welcome back to the How Can You podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of entrepreneurs, figure out how they got where they are, so then you can hopefully do the same thing. So today I'm here with Ebrahim Turner. He's an agency owner, entrepreneur living in Bali. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me, Ty. Pleasure to come on. Yeah, as I said, my name's Ebrahim, 28 years old, which is old as heck for this space. Been in this space for like 7-8 years, started like the personal development journey probably like a decade ago now. And yeah, last year choose to move to Bali. Why? Because I started for freedom, right? Time, location, financial. And then a year ago, I realized, why the heck aren't I actually doing that? So yeah, moved over to Bali and now, running the agency as well as doing coaching.
I like it. So I want to dive deep into your journey at the beginning. What led you down the path of entrepreneurship? I find often with entrepreneurs, there's something within their childhood years that made them almost tick as an entrepreneur. For example, for me, watching my parents struggle with money gave me kind of that hunger that led me down the path of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering what that is for you.
Yeah, I started entrepreneurship, honestly, not intentionally. My dad came over from Uganda, Africa with nothing, and I watched him basically from poverty have to build a business from scratch, right? So from a very young age, I was watching my dad build businesses. So that was really how I got started into entrepreneurship. My first business in entrepreneurship, I was 13 years old selling sweets in school. Classic. The difference was my dad would buy the sweets for me from the cash and carry. So I was making 100% profit margins. My first big purchase was a red mini moped, basically the equivalent of the Lamborghini nowadays. Crashed it within 3 days and saved up 3 months to get that thing. And then, yeah, bunch of different things like most people from there. But I really got into it when I was at university. That was where my real online entrepreneurship started. Matcha tea business was my first business. So I'm drinking matcha right now. I used to hate it at the time though. Now it's popular. I sold it on Amazon, made like a couple $1,000 a month. That got me through university.
Yeah.
Eventually quit that, went into drop shipping. Eventually quit that, went into Forex trading. Tried multiple different agencies until, this one finally hit.
Yeah. So like you went to university. What made you become, obviously you had entrepreneurial tendencies from a young age, but what made you start a marketing agency instead of going down the traditional path of getting a job after university?
Well, in a way, I did go down the traditional path first because I actually got 2 jobs first. So my first ever job was in recruitment, and then I left that job and recruited myself to one of our clients in a sales position, selling advertising space in London. And I could see that I was selling these pages of like a picture on a page for 10K to like CEOs of the biggest gambling companies in the world. And that was where I realized, okay, there's definitely like a better way to do this. So that was when I first figured it out. But for people who are getting into online entrepreneurship, I actually recommend getting a job first. I know it's like uncommon to say, but that's what I did. I learned sales, which was the most important skill. I learned marketing, I learned communication in slightly bigger companies so that I could see just like how the real world works, because people come into the online space with such like high expectations, which I don't blame them because that's what all the gurus tell them. But the reality is like you're going to get punched in the face a lot of times until that lesson's taught. So I actually say start in a job first. That's why I recommend like all the guys my main team who work for me for my agency now, they actually all tried to start agencies, right? And they've realized, oh, it's actually really hard. And they realize, okay, it maybe makes more sense to be nearer to me where, okay, yeah, they're going to go start something in the future. But like for now, they can just be on a much more accelerated growth trajectory.
Yeah. So what was the first step in your journey of starting an agency?
The first step was seeing a Ty Lopez ad. I remember it was like going around our university, everyone was just saying like knowledge, like here in my garage, like it was crazy. Like every single person knew who this guy was. Obviously they thought he was a scam. I eventually caved in and made the biggest purchase of my life up until then, which was his $67 course. And honestly, like I remember on that like buy button, I was like shaking, I was sweating, I was like, dude, like, am I really going to spend $67 on this course? Like, what if I get scammed? And it was actually an amazing course. It was like lessons from his mentors, which he taught, and it was just like long, unedited videos, like no like nice captions, no nothing. It was just him sitting there in his like room somewhere. But it was like that was what got me started. Yeah.
Okay, so then how long after you started did it take you to land your first client?
So I didn't even start for the longest time. After I was just in like information consuming mode. I was reading because he told me two things, right? Here are the two things I learned from Ty Lopez that got me started. Number one, find mentors. Number two, read books. So reading books was easier because I could stay in my room. Eventually, I found a mentor who was actually someone who ran a digital marketing agency. He came and spoke at my university, and he was exactly 10 years ahead of me. So I remember walking up to him and I was like shaking. I was like, right, I need to get this guy as my mentor. Ty Lopez told me to. And basically when I went up to him, I said, hey, Marcus, thank you for this talk today. Like, can I work for you for free? Right? Thinking like, I've just thought of the most genius plan here. And he just looked at me and smiled exactly like that. And he was like, no, but we can go for coffee. And we became friends. And I later found out, for anyone wondering like how to get a mentor, if you just offer yourself for free, it's not actually valuable because you're more of a liability than an asset because you have no skills. I didn't know that at the time. I thought, yeah, this will help, right? And I get people now come to me all the time asking like, can I just work for you for free? And I'm like, well, if you have a skill set that will help me, yes, but otherwise I'm going to be helping you more than you could help me, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not just about working for free. It's looking at how can you provide value. So those were the two things that I learned starting out. And then eventually he launched a SMMA course. And again, I spent so long just waiting in fear, like, okay, does this thing really work? Seeing all these 15-year-old kids making money. And eventually I like took the plunge and got in. And then I'd say I probably signed a client within probably between 1 and 2 months after that.
And how did you do it?
So, dude, when it came to signing my first client, I just walked into every store that had a shop front. And I was like, hey, you need Facebook ads. Hey, do you need Facebook ads? I had this big file of facts of paper and literally example Facebook ads because the mentor in there, Joe Soto, shout out if anyone knows Joe Soto, told me to do that. So I'd literally go in and be like, hey, I can run these ads for your business and it will get you customers. Because I also learned how to run Facebook ads in a separate course before that Ty Lopez course, right? And that actually gave me a hard skill. It was like a $2,000 course, which was, I was a broke kid. I didn't even have $2,000, but it taught me how to run Facebook ads. And so I had like a physical skill. So I had more confidence because I knew the power of it, right? So I know most people learn to sell first nowadays, but I actually learned the skill set first. It took me a little longer, but it gave me that confidence that I could do it. The first ever physical client I landed was a pizza shop in Norwich called Donielli's for £500 a month after three-hour meetings. I walked out of there, head held high, pumped, signed my first client. And then the guy never replied to me again. They never paid me. So that was my first ever client.
I like it. So then what would you say your first business lesson was?
Oh, my first business lesson. Bro, there was so many. I'd say the first business lesson was to find people who have already done what you're looking to do. Because for a long time, I just didn't even know entrepreneurship was possible, right? So when I was in university, the thought of running a business while at university, it wasn't even a possibility in my mind. Now it's probably normal for people, but for me back then, I didn't even know you could do that. So I only learned that was possible by having somebody who'd already done it tell me. They were literally like, yeah, you can go start this thing right now. And that was like the fact that I could, right? And finding somebody who'd already done it, it wasn't even like they were giving me the secret blueprint. It was just show me that it's possible, right? Because you have to know that you can do it so that you can then like pour yourself into starting a business. Because a lot of people don't actually think it's possible. They see people online, watch YouTube videos, they see them doing it, making tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, but they don't actually think that they can do it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just a case of like being in proximity to somebody, go find a mentor, be in close proximity to them, see over the shoulder that they're actually building this thing, that they're actually making money, that they have a team, that they have clients. And then when you see it, you can touch it. And then you realize you can do it as well. Because you realize that you're not that different from them, right? They have like your mentor takes a shit. They have their own problems. Their wife hates them sometimes, right? They're a real human being and it humanizes them. So you realize you can do it too.
So then from the very start of your journey to now, what would you say your greatest business lesson would be?
My greatest business lesson would be just to focus on giving first, right? When I was first starting out, I was in scarcity, right? So I was just thinking, how can I get that first client paying me $1,000 a month? But it was coming from need, right? If I had just said, okay, I'm going to just give first instead, let's just try this out. Let me see how I can help you. I would have moved so much faster. And so that goes into business and life. And that switch I made early on was just to see, okay, how can I add value to everybody else? Now, the caveat to that is if you are starting out and you don't have many skills yet, it's actually hard to add value to people, right? Because you don't know much, right? So you have to learn those skills first. So looping that back around, the best business lesson I learned personally was to actually get the skills first. Because if you're somebody who, I didn't have much confidence, right? I didn't think I could do it, even though I had some experience in other areas. So like learning the hard skill first, then gave me the confidence, right? And then by learning the hard skill, I could then lead with value because I could say, hey, if you did X, Y, and Z, you'd actually get 10x ROI, right? So now back then I became good enough to the point where people would actually listen to me. And I think the problem is in today's day and age is entitlement, right? Because so many people can now make money online. It's a lot, in a way, it's like easier to make a couple thousand online than it is to get a high flying job in some ways, right? You can get started and make that. It leads to entitlement because you see everybody else doing it. But the reality is for me, so many people are now trying to do it. So you have to differentiate yourself. And that comes with just giving value first.
So you're a strong believer in the law of reciprocity.
100%. Yeah. Hormozy talks about that, right? Yeah. If you just give so much that people feel obliged to give you something back. But for me, it's like from meeting a lot of, millionaire 20-year-olds, particularly in Bali, like I speak to them and I'm like, yo, like what's it actually like meeting all these guys? And to be honest, a lot of it is just like tit for tat. A lot of it is give and take. And while yes, okay, you can exchange like business value, they don't necessarily like build that like deep connection. And to me, what's the point doing all of this if you're not actually building a deep connection? Like when it all comes down to it, yes, you can make money, but like for me, I just would much rather build like a genuine connection with someone. So when I'm helping someone or if I'm giving something, I know obviously in my head, like there is a possibility that this will come back to me, but I'm really doing it with as good of an intention as possible without the need for it to come back. Because if you're doing it with an entrepreneur, they can tell the difference because they're smart, right? So if you just give and you really show up, and I've done this multiple times with people where I'll just get on a call with them and I'll have like 3-page document of like, here's X, Y, Z, here's logins to this, go speak to this specific person, here's an editor who can do that for you, and just giving them like a 10K course consultation on a free connection call. Like, obviously I know that there's like a good chance of that coming back, but the way I look at it is just planting seeds in fertile soil. Because the problem I had wasn't not giving enough, it was actually giving too much to too many people where I would like sell myself short in a way. So it was actually like calling back that time and energy and then again planting seeds in fertile soil, right? If you give somewhere where there's the potential for growth, then it's just like making an investment. And the more of those investments you make over the long term, they're going to pay off because you just build up goodwill with people.
So you talked to me at the beginning of starting your agency. You actually didn't start for a while. And I think that's the biggest problem and challenge that people starting out have is actually just putting their foot in the door and starting the thing. I think a lot of it comes down to the fear of rejection, the fear of failure. And I think the way to overcome that is specific mindset shifts. So can you talk to me about those mindset shifts that the person just starting out may need to make in order to overcome that hump of just starting?
Yeah. when it comes to starting out an online business, you got to realize rejection is going to be the number one thing you come up against. And so if you're coming from a place where you've just been in school and you've been told that you need to get A stars in order to feel good and in order to succeed, that's not going to serve you in online business. You have to realize it's completely the opposite way around, and that you will get rejected. And actually that like every single rejection is only, if you look at it from the perspective of the more rejections I get, the closer I get to a yes, then it helps you to take your identity out of it, right? Because when you're starting out, you're very attached to the outcome. You're very attached to the business. It's essentially an extension of you. But do you think $1 billion business owner is thinking like, oh, like this client said no to one of my sales reps on the sales? No, they don't give a fuck, right? They're not even thinking about that. Yeah. So by being able to detach and realize it's just business, it helps to remove your identity out of the fear of that rejection. Now, it's built into us as human beings to fear rejection, because if we get rejected, then we're like out of the pack, essentially, right? We're out of the tribe, which means you can die, basically, right? Yeah. But in business, you just got to realize like the quicker you can get through those rejections, the quicker you can get hardened to that, the more of those notches you can get on your knife, then you're just ultimately going to succeed more. The only difference between me and someone else who's just starting is that I've just been said no to so many more times than they have. That's the only difference. Like there's no secret to that. There's no shortcut for that. It's just getting in the reps, getting in the rejections, and then eventually like you'll get yeses, and eventually you can detach. And just to add one more point onto that, when it comes to getting rejected, it's really an inner game, right? This is why I say internal state equals external reality. It all comes down to the inner state. It all comes down to the mindset. Because you can have the perfect script and strategy to outreach to someone, but if inside you're scared of getting rejected, you're not going to outreach to them because you know you're likely to get rejected. So you self-sabotage, which is why you have to be able to just handle that rejection internally, realize it's part of the process, and that's how you're going to succeed.
I like that. So if I were to walk in the door right now and I'm like, hey, Ebrahim, I'm looking to start an agency. What niche would you tell me to go in? Or what would your first advice be if you'd even advise to start an agency?
You know, it was funny because I was talking to this with some friends last night. We were at like a spa overlooking the like sunset, and I was just like, I went to my friend, I was like, is the agency space saturated? And we just all burst out laughing. You know how there's all these YouTube videos about like, I was like, is it saturated though? And we got to it and I said, look, the agency space isn't saturated. It's just the offers, right? Niches don't saturate, offers do. So when it comes to picking a niche, my answer is just close your eyes and just point and go. If you have something that you have some experience in, or you have family members, maybe you have a family member who's a realtor, or somebody who's an accountant, or somebody who's a car mechanic, or someone who you know who works in an MMA gym, and you can get a little bit of a leg up, sure, go with that. But what I would say is, if you're starting an agency, do not focus on what you're passionate about, because you will probably fail the first time and you will lose passion for that thing. I would actually say focus on something that you have no passion towards, but you know there's a high probability that you could get results in, i.e. if you have some kind of tie or prior experience to it. So that's basically how I would decide where to start. The second thing I would say is, if you look in all of these online courses, most people are failing. That's just a fact, right? Iman Ghardi's got 15,000 people in this course. Maybe 10% of them get above 10K a month, probably less in reality, right? And he's one of the best ones out there. Like, I think he's great at what he does. It's not his fault. It's the fact that people just take the knowledge and just follow it blindly. So the second part to having success when starting an agency is then finding out how to differentiate your offer. And this is something I still do to this day. Like, just look at what's going on around you. There's now the introduction of AI. There's things like short form content, right? Businesses are needing help with new types of things now, new types of technology. So just look at how can you incorporate that into your offer, and then just offer them something completely different. The best thing I'd say when it comes to starting a new business or an agency is, don't try and be a little bit better. Just be different. Put yourself in your own category. If everyone's saying, hey, I'll run Facebook ads for you, say, hey, I'll run a door knocking system for you where we go and knock on the doors of your clients, right? Completely the other end. Who's doing that? Nobody. But at least it makes you stand out and get that foot in the door.
I want to talk about the aspect, or the question of, is the agency space saturated? And especially a lot of people think it's saturated with courses like Iman Ghazi having 15,000 students, I like to say that there's always a gap in the market because as the agencies increase, as more agencies come out, the demand for the services is also increasing at the same time. So there's that gap in the market. And then on top of that, like you said, only 10% of them are actually doing. How many of the agencies that are starting out are actually going to persist, that are going to last in the long term? Not a lot of them. So if you can just outlast the temporary like hardships, the temporary rejection, whatever it may be, I think you can definitely succeed in the space.
Let me add one more thing to that,
Yeah.
right? When it comes to looking at, okay, is this thing saturated? Zoom out, because if you're thinking from a place of scarcity, right? Something can only be saturated if every single business has enough customers or has their demand met. The rate of new businesses, it massively exceeds how many people are coming into the market to offer that service.
Mhm.
The only way something can be saturated is every single business has enough clients and customers, which is never going to happen until the end of time,
Yeah.
right? So it's never a case of, is this saturated? It's just a case of, you need to offer something different, right?
I like that. Would you even recommend to start an agency, or?
It depends what your skill set is. If you're coming in from absolute scratch, to be honest, nowadays, like 3-4 years ago, I would say yes. But nowadays, it is more competitive. You're just going up against guys like me and guys who are way more successful than me, who have just been in the space for a long time. That's just how the market is, right? Doesn't mean you can't succeed, no. But is there a smarter way to go about it? I would say yes. So all the guys who've worked for me in my agency, they all started agencies first, right? And they failed to some degree, but that's not a bad thing. I also failed. They came in with me and now they're learning sales, now they're learning marketing, they're learning media buying, they're learning how to communicate to clients. And those are really the hard skills that you don't really get when you're just starting an agency, because all you're trying to do is get a client, right? So you're doing outreach all day, but you're not actually getting any face-to-face time with clients. So you're not developing your sales skills, and you're not learning how to get better at marketing because you haven't got any clients yet. So if you can actually go into a position in a company that is growing, like somebody who you think, okay, yeah, I bet on this entrepreneur, then you'll just get that skill set much faster and then just take that away. It's just logically, to me, that just logically makes sense. It's what I would have done starting out, but there were just no agencies when I started out. But nowadays, like that's really the big advantage, because if everyone's going to start an online business, just look, okay, everyone's doing that right now. How can I just do the opposite? The opposite is go work in a really good, fast growing online business. When I interviewed Paul Daly, who's Iman Ghazi's CEO, he told me that he got offered a $2 million salary for one of the other big course companies, but he said no because he wanted to work for Iman because he knew that it would be a much faster kind of pace. And he said to me, it's like being on a bullet train while somebody's shoving coke up your nose. That's what it's like working with Iman Ghazi. So you could imagine like his rate of growth, and now he's netting like millions in his salary at a much faster pace because he went in a fast growing company.
I want to talk to you about the biggest mindset shifts that took you from first 0 to 10K and then from 10K to 50K.
So the only skill that you need to go from 0 to 10K a month is one thing, which is focus. Right? When Warren Buffett and Bill Gates were in a room and they asked, what is the one skill set that you need to be successful? They both wrote it down on a piece of paper and they both wrote focus. The problem is in today's day and age is that there's so many flashy opportunities that you get shown on YouTube, that you get shown on Instagram and TikTok, that you think the grass is always greener. I effed up in that. So I can tell you wholeheartedly, if I just focused on that one thing, I would have got from 0 to 10 in probably a quarter of the time. When it comes from going from 10K a month to 50K a month, then it's not sexy, right? It's just about systemization and team. I would say systemize as much as you can, meaning if you can learn how to use Zapier, if you can learn how to use CRMs and softwares and stuff like that, do that first. And then at a certain point, you are going to need team members, which is a totally different set of skills where it comes to like learning how to lead, be a leader, which is basically just a personal development journey. But I would say if you're at between 0 and 10, just focus on one thing, one service or product, one offer, one audience, and just focus on that until you get to 10K a month.
I like that. So I want to kind of talk to the people that are just starting out, or maybe they haven't started out and they're in a tough position right now. I remember when I first started out, to tell my family and my friends that I was quitting my job to start a marketing agency, and had 0 clients. was a tough thing to do. And I mean, they didn't believe in me for a very good reasons. I didn't have any evidence to show them a reason why they should believe in me, I guess. So talk to me about that guy that just started his agency or just started job searching or just started that business, and his girlfriend is, why are you doing this? Or his parents are like, you should get a job and go the safe route, or these type of things.
If you're just starting out and you're worried about people not believing in you, stop worrying, because they shouldn't believe in you, because you've not shown them any reason why they should.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think anyone who started out, everyone believed in them at the beginning? No, right?
Yeah.
Because you're doing something that is different from the norm. So you've got to realize that if you're starting an online business, you're not going to have that support structure, and for good reason, right? Your parents and the people around you ultimately want you to stay the same, because that's the you that they know. And by you growing, you're just a mirror to them of what they could be doing, which is very uncomfortable. People don't like to admit that. So that's number one when it comes to starting. The second thing I would say is, like, you can use it as fuel. I remember for me, like, my family were actually very supportive, but I remember this one time I told my mum, I'm going to move into this insane apartment building in London called Sky Garden. It's like one of the most beautiful apartment buildings. And I remember she just laughed at me and she was just like, kind of raised her eyebrows. Bro, I never forgot that moment. And I was like, I'm going to show you, right? I love my mum more than anything, but I was like, I'm going to show you. A couple years later, it was during COVID, I was looking at apartments. I was now making like 5 figures a month, more than 5 figures a month. And I had a real estate agent. One of the buildings she showed me was that Sky Garden. And she showed me and she was like, do you want to tour around it? And I could afford it at this time. It was like, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 a month or whatever. And I remember looking at it, remembering that moment with my mom. And I was like, this is internally satisfying for me right now. But here's the thing. One, I didn't even want that apartment by the end of it. And two, when I told my mom about that story, she didn't even remember. Right. So you can use these things as motivation, but just realize, like, they're just mind games at the end of the day that you can use to give yourself that motivation if you need it. So yeah, starting out, just realize people shouldn't believe in you because they've got no reason to. Just focus on becoming so good that they can't ignore you. Now they believe in me because I like take them to nice places. I can do nice things for them. They see me doing well and they're incredibly proud of me and they show me so much love. And that's how it should be, right? And that's how it'll be with my kids. Like, I'll give them belief, but at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, show me that you can do it, right? Then you've earned the right to you've got the receipts for people to actually believe and trust in you. And what I would say is, if you don't have that, just don't share it with people. If you don't have people around, because you're kind of like a newborn baby when you're starting out. You can be very soft and brittle. And when you're getting rejected all day by a prospect, then getting rejected by your family and loved ones is going to be that extra kick in the teeth.
Yeah.
Just realize that if you keep going, you will eventually get some kind of result, and just keep it quiet. Keep your cards to your chest. That's how I did it.
I like that. So starting out, you were mentioning how focus, or not even just starting out, but the whole journey, focus is very, very vital in terms of actually succeeding. And in a world full of information and distraction, it's very hard to actually stay focused. It's a matter of discipline, but what would you say to someone that is having trouble staying focused and doing the things that they know they need to do in order to get to the places that they know they want to be?
When it comes to learning how to focus, if you can just focus on one task for a long period of time, you're already above 95% of people. You don't even have to be that good, because TikTok, Instagram Reels, these things are siphoning your focus right now. So in order to focus, it's simple. Just delete everything. I had 2 years when I was not on social media. You can go on my other Instagram. It still says retired from IG. I didn't do it. When I spoke to Iman Gadzhi, we were talking about like being online and stuff like that. After I had a call with him, he was like, yeah, where do you want me to link you? In the description, I was like, don't link me. Don't even put my name in the title. If you go on my video with him, you won't find my name. Because I didn't want people reaching out to me, because I was just in building mode. No one knew who I was. I was just doing it in the darkness. It's only now that I'm starting to talk about it more and like share this, because I've actually done something. I wouldn't have been able to do it if I was constantly sharing it along the way. So for focus, I would just say, just remove everything. Delete your social media for a period of time. Remove any friends from your friend circle who aren't helping you get towards your goal. Just be ruthless with it, right? Just tell them, this is what I'm doing. Say the same thing with family members, right? If you need to lock yourself in a room for a year like I did, or a shed like I did, go and do it. Because you can then come out and tell people what you did after the fact, right? It feels so much better when you've actually done something. And that's what's also going to give you the confidence, right? Because now the reason you can't focus is because you're looking at what everybody else is doing, hoping to find something that's going to give you that shiny object to get to where you want to get to. The reality is like people aren't posting content to help you. Some are, but most are just doing it to help themselves, right? To get your attention from them. And your attention is like the most valuable commodity that exists in an online world. This is why every single social media app is free. It's not free. You're paying with your attention, which is your most valuable asset.
I like that. So let's talk about distractions then.
Yeah.
Iman talks about a lot about girlfriends, parties, all these type of things that can elude you and ultimately take you away from the things that you know that you need to do. I want to start off first with relationships. What do you think about relationships when you're just starting out?
Yeah, this is a two-part answer. So when you're just starting out, first of all, realize that a relationship takes as much energy as a business, if not more. So I would just recommend to most people, don't be in a relationship when you are starting out, generally, because you're trying to create a baby whilst trying to create a relationship with another person. And if you're young, the chances are, so I'm sorry, it's probably not going to be the relationship that lasts the rest of your life. Just like your first ever business is probably not going to be the business that pops off and gets to millions, right? It's just kind of the reality. So particularly if you're a man listening to this, by focusing on yourself initially, if you do want to attract a relationship, just realize by focusing on yourself, your own value is going to increase, meaning you can attract somebody better later on. So that's what I did. But the caveat to that is there's a second part, which is if you're able to find the right relationship, and I'm just going to talk to men here because I'm a man, if you're able to find the right woman who is more mature, then it can actually be the best motivator. Because if you're in a relationship where you see yourself together long term and you do want to build a family and you do want to get married at some point or whatever you want to do, then it can be such a strong internal motivator because now you're not just doing it for you, you're also doing it for them. And that's the position I'm in right now with my girlfriend, where we're building for that future. I can say that motivation is stronger than anything I've experienced. But if I rewind back to 10 years ago when I was 19 and starting out, I was just trying to build a business so that I could get girls, right? Go out clubbing.
Yeah.
And I was on this vicious cycle because I would make some money. I would then go out partying with friends. I would hook up with girls. And then I had no motivation to then work because I fulfilled that loop, right? And I was on this like vicious cycle. So when it comes to like having a relationship, realize that it can actually be the best thing for you if you found the right girl. But in order to find the right girl, you're going to have to build yourself up into a man who's worthy of her in the first place.
I like that. I like that a lot. So then talk to me about other distractions. Like you said, social media, you deleted all of it, right? I think that was a very smart decision. Parties, obviously we can we can put that into the side. That's obviously not beneficial to growth, especially growth for a business. Let's move into self-doubt, because this is a big topic for people that are starting out, that are trying to make it. They're not seeing results, right? They're putting in the work day to day. No one's buying from them. They can't seem to sign any clients. Their videos are getting 5 views. Why? Why in anyone's right mind should they keep pursuing something that they see that's not working?
Well, they shouldn't at a certain point, because there's two types of people. When it comes to self-doubt, there are two types of people. The first type of person is the one who will try, not see any results, then move on to another thing. That type of person should continue for, I would say, at least a 6-month period, going all out to see if it actually works. The second type of person is more of the delusional person who just thinks, if I just keep doing exactly this thing, eventually it'll work. But the reality is you might just be doing it wrong. So the caveat to that is you need to be pivoting and you need to be making micro 1% adjustments along the way, test a different offer, test a different type of client, test a different strategy, and just keep iterating until you figure out what works. So the question was around self-doubt, right? Eventually. I'm not sure if that really answers the question of self-doubt. Oh no, then you said why do they keep
Yeah. Why should they keep going when they see zero results?
It's kind of like if you go into a job, right, you're going to get paid every month from the beginning, right? But you know that pay is always going to be the same or marginally more if you get promoted. So you know that you're capped forever, essentially, if you're doing just a regular 9 to 5 job. But in a business, you know that you can make an unlimited amount of money, right? That's the potential of it, right? Because the limitation is only the marketplace. And so you shouldn't get results straight away because the reward is so much greater, right? It wouldn't make sense. Otherwise, why would anyone ever have a job, right? The job is the safe route. The business is the risky route, right? An entrepreneur by definition is somebody who is risk taking, right? Risk seeking. And so it wouldn't make logical sense to get results straight away. So if you can just look at it over a 10-year time horizon instead and think, okay, well, if you made zero for the first year, but you knew by year 3, you'd be making 100K, and you knew that, how much easier would it be to get through years 1 and 2, right? That's actually the reality if you commit yourself and just focus on one thing. You'd have to be an idiot to not be making money if you actually focus. The problem is that that self-doubt creeps in too early because we live in a world full of distraction, right? It's the devil, right? And I was atheist for a certain period of time when I was at university. Like, if you said you're religious, you'd be looked down upon. I used to look down upon people who were religious. I thought I was like, how can you be religious, right? And I'm like ashamed to say that now, but it was programmed into me by the mainstream education system, right? And so you also need something higher than you, right? You need a foundation in order to get you through those tough times. And for me, that's God, right? That's why I go to church every Sunday, because there's a beautiful song called Firm Foundation that we sing all the time. And it goes like, Christ is my firm foundation, right? The rock on which I stand. And whether you're religious or not, if you can have something that's higher than you that you can look to, whether it's like a spirituality or the universe or a religion that you follow, I'm all for that, because when the times do get tough, you're able to kind of lean on that greater and higher power than yourself. And to me, like, that was why I found spirituality. I found like spirituality in the path of religion out of pain, because I got to a certain point where I actually did make some money. I made the 10, 20K a month, which I thought would solve all of my problems. And then I realized it actually didn't, right? It didn't solve the internal problems. It didn't solve the problems of me feeling still like I'm not enough, like I'm a failure, like I'm going to lose it all, like I'm going to be abandoned and rejected. What do people think of me? And this whole like almost fake persona that I'd created because people thought I was one way, but internally I didn't feel like that, right? And so just realize that getting to that milestone isn't actually going to make you feel different. It can solve real problems like money problems, so you don't have to think about money, which I 100% recommend, but it's not going to solve the internal problems, right? And you know, you've been in Bali as well. You've probably met a lot of successful entrepreneurs at this point, like myself. You realize that a lot of their lives are not actually as great as you think they are, or as what they portray online, right? Because you see them, right? And that's not throwing shade on anyone. That's just the truth. And so that was how I found God, which is now that foundation. So no matter what is going on, I always have that, right? No matter if everybody leaves, no matter if I get rejected, if I lose every single client, if I never get a response, I've always got God, right? And everybody can tap into that. And I really recommend they do. And we live in a society now where everything like it's all the devil's work, man. It's like, look at what the media's putting in for you. Look at OnlyFans, look at like the porn industry, look at like what happened. Look when you go on Instagram, what do you see? Right? That's all like the devil's work. So the counterbalance to that is to find God, is to find some kind of religion. And then when you're struggling, when you're feeling like you won't make it, that's when you can lean on God.
I think it's very interesting for us because we're in a very tight echo chamber here in Bali of entrepreneurs making money online with certain beliefs and things that we all kind of agree on. But if you were to go back into, let's say, the normal world, the 9 to 5, and speak to these type of people and say these type of beliefs to them, we'd be DM'd almost crazy to a certain extent by most people, right? The things that we believe in, most people don't believe in. And especially for that kid that's starting out and that's in the education system, that thinks that there's more, that education system isn't the only way. But his thoughts are deemed crazy in that environment, right? Talk to me about that, about why, because your environment does shape your reality, right? And like I said, we're in an echo chamber here in Bali, so all these thoughts are very free and they're accepted here. But in the regular world, they're not so accepted.
So there are three things that affect your reality: your thoughts, your feelings, and your environment. They affect your internal state, which is what creates your external reality. So if we narrow in on environment, if you're in an environment that doesn't support the belief systems that you have, there's actually light at the end of that tunnel, because you can now have access to people and content like this that can actually show you it is possible. And all you need is one person to tell you it is possible. For you to just be close enough to one person to give you that like shimmer of belief for you to then just run with it. And for me, when I was starting out when I was 18, all I was looking for is just someone to show me, no, this is actually real. And as soon as I found that out, as soon as I spoke to a mentor in person and he showed me, I was like, right, I'm ready to drop everything and just commit to it. When I was starting out, I did my economics degree. I spent 5 years going on the path into finance. I was supposed to go and work in a bank like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs. I never even applied for a job after I finished that entire degree and spent 50K on it. It was literally like, do I go into the matrix or do I take this other route? Yeah. And it was literally like, which pill do I want to take? Like that was literally the moment. I remember sitting there and I said, you know what, worst case scenario, I can go down this route for a couple of years. If I fail, I can still go back. And that was the best decision I ever made.
Yeah, I think that's something that helped me as well, is realizing that this path is only going to be open and have the same opportunities for a certain amount of time. Whereas that other path, the traditional path, that job that I had, that job that you had, you could always go back to that. Or sorry, the job that you didn't have. But you could always go back to that. That's always going to be there. School will always be there. That job will always be there. But the opportunities of the internet and starting your own business, they're not always there. Of course, there'll be new opportunities, but the ones that are presented to you right now, I think it's also super important at a young age to take the biggest risk that you can take. And that's something that you did, and that's something that I did. Because we don't have a family, we don't have a house, we don't have anything to ultimately really lose, right? So
I'll add one thing to that. When I graduated from university, I actually made a video, and you can go back and look at this video. I had bags under my eyes. I literally said, I've just graduated from university. I'm not going to go and get a job. I'm going to try and start a business. Worst case scenario, I'll sleep with my family at my family's place. If they won't take me, I'll sleep on the street. But to me, the bigger risk is never even trying and living with that regret, rather than just going into the traditional education system, right? That's actually the bigger risk. You can do a calculation in your head. What's more risky, trying and failing, and trying and failing and trying and failing, or going into that 9-to-5 job where you know the outcome is you're going to retire at 60 or probably 80 by the time you get there, probably going to have a mediocre family, you're probably not going to be financially stable, right? You know that outcome, whereas entrepreneurship is the unknown, but at least you know there's a possibility of getting there. And to me, that's actually the lower risk, because living in regret for the rest of my life about never doing it is a much stronger motivator for me than taking the quote unquote safe route.
Yeah. One of my favorite concepts is the person that you could have been that you meet at the end of your life. Yep. And I want to be as close to the person that I could have been as possible. I want to be almost identical to that person. I don't want to die one day and meet this person that I could have been and be so far from him and just have so much regret and I wish I just did those things and I could have been you. I want to be him when I get to that point.
100%. The fear for me was just having a mediocre life and not getting to experience everything the world has to offer. Because now you can see it. You can go online, you can see what the world has to offer. You can see what happens when you go to Dubai or to Miami or someone like Bali. You can literally, point of view, see the exact lifestyle. So now you know if you don't pursue this path, that is literally what you're missing out on. And so if you just use that fear and discomfort as a motivator initially, it's very, very powerful, right? And then eventually at some point, you probably want to switch to maybe a higher purpose or wanting to serve others. But just use what you've got when you're starting out. Don't worry about not having this mission of how you want to save the lives of 1 million people or whatever. Like, just figure out you first and get to a place where you can then help others.
Yeah. A lot of people say nowadays, though, that they want to be a motivational speaker, that they want to be all these things because they want to help people. But the reason that they want to do that is ultimately because of what they think that they'll feel when they help thousands of people, not necessarily because they want to help those people.
The only reason we do everything is to feel something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you want to have that 10K month so that you can feel like you've made it, so you can feel significant, so you can feel the love and attention from the woman who you think you could attract, or the country you think you could go to.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is like only you decide what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so the best thing I ever did was to invert that, and was to start like going inward and thinking, okay, what would it actually feel like if I got there? And then I was acting from a new state, right? I was acting as if I was already there. And that is what actually gave me that confidence. That is what gave me that self-belief to say, no, I'm already that person. Time is just catching up. That was the thing I always used to say. Like I'd worked to myself so much internally. I knew that I'll get there because it's just a matter of time, because I'm already acting from that state.
Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that you're a fan of the work of Joe Dispenza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doing Joe Dispenza's meditations was like a pivotal point in my journey, because I'd just moved out into my penthouse apartment. So I'd made it, right? I'd moved out of my parents' house. I'd moved into the apartment that I know so many people want to do. And I actually felt the most lonely and depressed I'd ever felt, right? And so I was in truth heartbroken at the time. And so I couldn't really expand or experience love, and doing Joe Dispenza's meditations allowed me to start transforming my inner world. That's where internal state, external reality came from originally. Like it was from his body of work. And yeah, just doing those meditations just taught me how to feel, right? And as a man, oftentimes we're closed off to our emotions because we're more in the logical mind. But tangibly, if you're trying to start a business, people buy on emotions. And the only way you can make someone feel emotions, if you too can feel those emotions, because they're transferable, right? So when I started doing those meditations with Joe Dispenza, that was when money started to attract into my life. That was when I found my ex-girlfriend at the time, who we had an amazing relationship. That was when I started being able to travel the world, because I had transformed internally. I wasn't just thinking about it and coming from a place of fear. I was actually living from that space.
Yeah.
And it was the closest thing to magic I experienced at the time. I truly felt like life is magical, God is real, and that's just a beautiful space to live in.
I want to go back to the concept of God. So when you speak about God, do you mean like a man in the sky from the Bible type of God, or a God in the sense of like the universe, a higher power, that type of thing?
I don't know that the Bible says that God is a man in the sky. In truth, I haven't read it in enough detail to know that. But when I think about God with a capital G, I'm talking about everything. So when I say God, you are God, right? I am God from a higher perspective. But the way I look at God is the creator of everything that is here right now, right? Is all seeing, all knowing. He is unconditional love. He has you at all times. I do believe that there is life after death, and I do believe in karma. So this concept of God helps me practically to stay on a path where I'm making good decisions, where I'm consciously living life. And it's just like how if you've got a camera watching you, you're going to act differently, right? You're not going to slack off. You're not going to do anything you shouldn't be doing, right? And that's how I imagine God. I'm like, God sees everything. So if I'm ever doing something that like my lower self would do, I know God sees that. Right, so practically it keeps me on track, but from a greater perspective, it's just like I think we need an element of faith as humans. We need to, like, if we knew everything, like I think life would be very dull. And I think we need, like, God's given us 95% of everything we need to know, but there's that 5% which is faith. And bringing that back to entrepreneurship, you need some faith at the beginning, bro. You actually need a lot of faith because you're going to fail for an inordinate amount of time, more than you ever have in your life. So having God there is like this unknown element that has kind of got your back. And it's just like, it's just always a fallback. To me, it's just like, it makes me feel grounded, and it makes me feel like I'm held, right? And no matter what, is always there. So God to me is just everything. It goes like God, then it could go like the universe, and then you could say like spirit beneath that. But yeah, lately I found God through, we gonna stop? Lately, I would say I have started to learn about God through the context of religion.
Mm,
I don't necessarily, I say, I would subscribe to one religion. I grew up in a Muslim and Christian household, so
mhm,
I'm still figuring it out.
mm.
But I definitely believe strongly that there is something greater than us.
Yeah, yeah. So if I were to, because I would say that I subscribe to very similar beliefs, I like to call it the universe, I guess, but you have a tier there.
Tiered system.
Yeah. So let's say I wanted to learn about God. Where did I go? Who's gonna teach me? How did you learn?
I initially came in through spirituality. So it was by feeling God, because
Mm,
God is not logical, right? God is everything. And it's, to me, God, you access God through through learning. So you can study scripture, you can study things like the Bible and the Quran.
mhm,
But more than anything, I'd say anything that can make you feel something internally, you could say in your soul, where you don't necessarily have all the answers in your head, but you can feel a draw towards it. So for
mm,
me, coming to Bali was also a spiritual journey, right? And
mm,
I couldn't logically describe why I'm coming. I could give reasons, but it was just a pull, right? So anytime you can feel that pull, that inner knowing, that intuition, that is how you can find God. And whatever medium gets you there, to me, I'm like, cool, as long as it gets you closer to God, because ultimately, that's why we're all here, right? It's to
mhm,
become more in alignment with God's plan from the
mhm,
highest perspective. And so everything I'm doing ultimately comes back to that. And I'll give an example of like one of the guys who works with me, Jaden. He's Muslim, so he prays every day and he goes to the mosque to pray. And this guy is like one of the most stoic, grounded, just calm people I've ever met. And it's because he's constantly worshiping God every day, which brings you back into the present moment. It gets you out of your head. And when you're present, you can essentially let go of anything. You can deal with those
mm.
like negative kind of feedback loops in the moment.
Yeah. All right. So then, what were there certain books for you or people that you listen to kind of learn more about God and connect more with God? Like, for example, maybe The Power of Now.
Yeah. Yeah, the number one book for me to learn about spirituality and to connect with God was a book by Michael Singer called The Surrender Experiment. And the reason I love that book specifically is because it's a documentation of his life, going inward, surrendering and getting closer to God. But he did this whilst building $1 billion company.
Mm,
And this is why I really listened to him, because guy was worth $300 million personally whilst following God, right? And studying all of the religions. And he said, and this is what I subscribe to, that it is surrender that is the ultimate way back to God. It's the highest path. And how is surrender practical in business terms? First of all, I'll tell you what surrender is not. Surrender is not just saying, okay, I have no control over this, so just let it happen. What surrender is actually is, okay, fuck, I just got rejected for the 100th time. Can I be okay with that? Can I accept that? Can I internalize that? And can I keep going anyway? And surrender is just whenever you get a setback, whenever you get a challenge, whenever you get a quote unquote problem, being able to just fully accept that is what it is, take responsibility for it, feel it internally, and then keep moving forward. And
mhm,
just to add on why surrender is so important when it comes to entrepreneurship, oftentimes when you get a setback, what happens? You don't feel good, you sweep it under the rug, and you just keep going. But the thing is that you think you've just moved on, but you haven't. It gets stored inside of you internally as a trauma. And then you think, well, I don't want to make that cold call again because I'm going to get rejected again. This is why surrender is so important, because surrender allows you to process that, let go of it, and then you can come forward from a present state again. If you want to see a good example of surrender, look what happens when you step on a dog's paw. It screeches, right? It looks up at you, it shudders, and it kind of shakes. And
yeah,
then within 5 seconds, that dog is licking your foot again, right? That is what surrender is, right? It's actually being able to move through what happens in the moment.
yeah.
And it shouldn't take more than 60 seconds to process anything if you fully just allow it to be. And that's a very deep spiritual concept, but that's also how you can apply it practically into day-to-day life.
Mm. So I'm not sure if you're comfortable talking about this, but psychedelics.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
would you say psychedelics were like a big gateway into the spiritual realm for you?
They were, yeah. Psychedelics were a gateway into just finding God and spirituality. The first time I took psychedelics, though, was not in a spiritual way.
Mm.
I
Like
was,
most people.
yeah, I was in Amsterdam, took some truffles, with a group of friends in a freaking hostel. And dude, when I took those magic mushrooms, I like literally felt like I was gonna throw up. I started sweating. I got into bed and I like actually passed out momentarily. And then suddenly I needed to like, I thought I was gonna shit myself. So I like ran to the bathroom, got onto the toilet, and then the next thing I know, I woke up and my head was on the toilet roll, like sweated through it. And I woke up and I was on mushrooms. So I could now see like shapes, dragons, angels, and like 6 of my mates all tripping balls for the first time as well. And although that wasn't necessarily like a spiritual ceremonial experience, it taught me one thing. Psychedelics taught me that there is definitely something greater than just this 3D reality, because I saw it with my own eyes. So that was my gateway into it. And then now, like, mushrooms are something I use a couple of times a year intentionally when I feel like I need more guidance. Ayahuasca was a really big part of my journey, which helped me essentially to realize that I had issues around self-worth, right? I didn't know that self-worth was even a thing. If someone said, if you asked me, Ebrahim, are you worthy? I'd be like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't I be? I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. But deep down to my core, I didn't actually feel like I was worthy. I always felt like an imposter. I always felt like I'm going to get like found out for being like a fraud or something. And it wasn't until I did ayahuasca that it taught me that that's just all complete bullshit. And it stripped away all of my armor, all of the masks, all of the ways I wanted to be perceived by people. And it just showed me like, no, you are worthy. And it was very uncomfortable. It was very painful. It was an ego death to go through that, which was extremely challenging because I was no longer attached to that identity. So it literally felt like death. And this is why I don't necessarily recommend psychedelics for everybody. I think you should do a certain amount of like inner work first. I'd like been deep into meditation for a couple of years. I'd been sort of like researching and understanding about it. But for me, like psychedelics, ayahuasca were a pivotal point of my journey. Now, I do think that some people kind of do it too much. So they rely on these things that are just like kind of little upgrades in the video game that you should use now and again. Some people do it too much and then they become reliant on it. My belief is that actually we can like move through and solve anything ourselves, but sometimes here and there, they can be like a useful teacher to come and bring in. And I'm the type of person where I just want to try everything. I just want to like see and experience everything that the world has to offer, right? We only get, as far as we know in this lifetime, one shot at this. So why not just see what it's like, right? And out of curiosity, at least, to me, I'm like, why would I not want to try that thing? So yeah, there's a couple more psychedelics that I'll probably try at some point. There's this one where you like put a toad on your arm or something, and it's like makes you trip balls. We'll see what happens with that.
Interesting. I want to bring the topic of psychedelics back to what you were talking about earlier with surrender. I think so. I've done psychedelics a couple of times. Sometimes in the party sense, which is definitely not where it's at. But in the self-exploration sense, the biggest advice I think, or the thing that's helped me the most within experiencing psychedelics, is to surrender, is to just let go and let everything be as it is, and don't try to, because your mind will confront you with truths, and whether you want to accept those truths or not is how the ship will go. The best advice and that I've ever gotten and used is to accept everything, just surrender, accept, and just be, let it flow almost.
Yep.
Yeah.
We live our lives like this, right? With a fist. We live our lives like this, right? With our fist clenched so tightly. This is how we are day to day. We're so tightly wound, trying to control reality. And surrender is just letting go and releasing. And it's relaxing. And it's doing the opposite to what we're so used to be doing. The reason why entrepreneurs struggle with surrender is entrepreneurs operate in a false illusion that they can control everything. But the reality is we can only control our own actions and reactions to things. We actually cannot control the outcome. And this is why so many entrepreneurs actually struggle to start and scale. It's because they want to control every single thing around them. But the reality is like we actually have little control over most things. Nature and God ultimately decides, right? We can control our inputs, and then we have to like surrender and then allow like whatever's going to happen to happen.
Mhm.
So it's a bit of a dichotomy, because on the one hand, you do have control because you can control what you do to a very high degree. You can control if you mess around for like 8 hours going on TikTok all day, or work for 16 hours straight in deep focused work. You
Yeah.
can control that,
Mm.
right? But you can't control the outcome. And that's where surrender comes in. And why is that useful? It just makes you feel peaceful. It makes you just relax. It makes you a nice person to be around.
Mm.
You ever been around someone who's just always so work focused and they just can't even like smile and have a laugh? You don't want to be around that person, right? And at the end of the day, like that's what surrender can do for you. It just makes it, I used to be that guy. That's how I know. Like there was a period of time when I was so serious and focused on work that like I wasn't fun to be around. Like I just like would spend all my time working in my apartment, which I needed to do. But if I just like found out how to surrender, and it would have just made the whole process way more enjoyable. I didn't know you could enjoy building a business. I didn't know you could enjoy rejection. Now it's just a game. We're launching our new agency at the moment from in our series 0 to 30. We launch our first campaign and we get like 50 rejections instantly. Bang, stop. I'm going to report you. People like spamming us back, right? I was just laughing, dude. I was like, yo, let's go, man. Like day one, bring it, right? Whereas before, when I was so tightly run, I would have been like, oh, this is not working. I would have been like, I've just messed up. We just spent this money on this or whatever. Now it's just like, it's light. It's the game, right? It's what will make, when we succeed, it will make it worth it because we now have that comparison to look back at.
Yeah. So let's talk to me about your series. I want to first kind of go into like content in general. So how long have you been creating content for?
I would say properly like a year and a few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was it like a big step for you to actually start putting yourself out there onto the internet for anyone to see?
Yes, because before putting out content, I'd still had a lot of fears around insecurity. How will I be perceived? On the people who are more qualified than me? Am I an imposter? The thing that helped me to start putting out content though, was when my mentor at the time said to me, like, if you had the cure for cancer and somebody came to you needing that cure, who are you not to give it to them, right? Meaning, if you've got something to share with your content, it's not about you and how you're perceived. It's about who is that person that you're helping and impacting. And what it does is it helps you to take your attention off the self and the ego and actually look at, okay, well, what's the impact here? And that was like the way I was able to start making content because it wasn't about me. You know what I mean? It's about them.
Yeah. And then so now you just started a new series where you're taking an agency from 0 to 30K per month. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so 0 to 30 is a series, starting a brand new agency, $0 a month, no investment, like none of like the current resources that we have, and scaling it to 30K a month in 90 days. And the reason I'm doing that is because when I started out when I was 18 years old, all I wanted to do was just make $1,000 a day. Now I know to a lot of people that sounds crazy, right? But I said, if I can make $1,000 a day, then I can have financial freedom. I can go wherever I want. I can have the apartment I want. I can provide for my girlfriend and my family, and life will just be good. And so now I want to show that to everybody who hasn't started or has started and failed, how possible it is. And in that series, I'm just going to give everything away that I know. I've spent over 100K in self-education. I'm just going to like brain dump everything into this series and into my like free community and just help as many people start a business and get that same level of freedom for themselves.
But why? Why are you giving it all away for free?
So there's two reasons, right? Number one is selfishly, it makes me feel good, right? Like me coaching people and seeing them grow is the deepest fulfillment that I get. And two, I just think it's like the way to win in today's day and age and to build a really, I want to impact millions of people. And so to do that, I need to provide as much real value to as many, not like fluffy shit you see on YouTube, but actual tangible, like here's how we set up this bank account and then we're not paying tax legally, right? Here's our Stripe account. Here's exactly what we're doing for outreach. Here's our offer. Here's us on the phone trying to get prospects. Here's how we're closing clients, right? Actually showing that, because people will receive genuine value from that. And then by the law of reciprocity, they'll want to buy whatever I have in the future, right? I'm not selling anything now because I honestly don't need to, and I don't want to right now. But I know that in the future, like the more I can just build up that goodwill, then I can make an ask in the future, and people will, like, it won't be hard because people will want to just buy it because they'll have that trust in me and they would have already received so much.
So what are your future plans with content, or I mean just business and life in general?
Content wise, it's to it's to grow my personal brand. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be doing a lot of short form content,
Mm-hmm.
getting that out there, really producing high quality content on YouTube now.
Mm-hmm.
One video a week with this new series is documenting the whole journey of the new agency. In terms of life, I would say right now, just experiencing the world. Like I look at the whole world as like a playground now, and I just want to experience as much of it as possible. Like particularly before I settle down and have a family. So like doing so I'm going to London next, and then I'm going to Italy, and then Portugal, and then probably Bali, then Cape Town, and just traveling with like really cool people, being surrounded by people on that same mission,
Mm-hmm.
and just helping as many people along the way as possible. Where we go after that, I don't know, but that's kind of the plan in terms of life. And then business, just getting the agency to 100K a month. And then once I do that, I think I can then have the right to then go and help people with their own online business, right? And actually start coaching people, because really that's my like deep, like highest calling is just to help people do their own thing. And I get way more satisfaction of helping somebody just starting out than helping like a business owner go from like 1 million to like 1.5 million, right? Like I don't even know who that real business owner is. I don't even speak to them myself because my team speaks to them, and it's awesome. But like I get way more drive from just helping like actually people who were where I was, right? When I needed that help, when I needed someone to just show me it's possible and show me the ropes.
Yeah, I like to say that I like to help people help themselves. I think that's huge, because you can't help someone unless they do want to help themselves.
Yeah.
And those people that do want to help themselves, like that young fella that came on to a sales call with you, it's fun to help them because you see them grow, you help them grow, and it's like it's fun. It's like you enjoy it.
Yeah, man. It's the most like the best memories I have were that first client, even though they never paid me, right? And it was like when I first started coaching people and I saw like the light bulb switch for them. It's those first moments. And so it's like helping people at the very beginning have their first wins is, to me, is like, that's the coolest shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're here in Bali and we're connected very frequently with very cool people, very high level entrepreneurs. And you specifically are connected with some very cool people, maybe like Iman, Arlen. For example, Iman is the reason that I actually started an agency, right? So it's very cool to see that you're connected with him. Talk to me about that. How are you connected with these type of people? And
yeah, when it comes to networking and connecting with people who are multimillionaires or are living the life that you want to live, realize that there's probably a gap between you and them right now. So it's about how do you bridge that gap? And to me, it was, okay, how can I provide them value in some way, or how can I get their attention? So with Iman, tactically, I just was in his program and I did really well, and I became good enough to the point where they couldn't ignore me. And so they invited me to like get on a call with him. He invited me to get on a call with him and show what I was doing, right? So I just was able to be good enough until I couldn't be ignored, and then actually provide value to his community, right? So that's how that connection was started. Or take it with someone like Arlen, or a guy called like Dan McAvoy, who's the crypto teacher he was for Andrew Tate, now he's doing it for Iman. I just bought into his program, right? And then we actually became friends and we like hung out in Bali. So it's either like, it's like three main ways to network with high level people. Number one is to be in their community and just become so good that they can't ignore you. Number two is to actually figure out a way to just provide real tangible value up front to them, right? And three is just, if you're actually just vibe in the same way, you can just hang out as friends, right? Because you got to realize people who are ultra successful, like oftentimes people just want things from them. Whereas if you can just come from a place of like, we seem to have some similar interests, I'm not going to put this guy on a pedestal, let's just see if they want to hang out. And you can provide value to them in the way of just having fun, right? And just like having a good time, because that's ultimately what they want. They just want to like chill and have a good time in their downtime, and realize that you can be that person to just have a good time with them, which is valuable.
Yeah. I want to add into that also location, like just being in the right places at the right 100%. Times. I know Arlen talks about that, but being, for example, in Bali right now is amazing. Tons of very cool people that are coming in. And
Yeah, with that, I'd say when it comes to meeting and networking with high level people, there's two ways when it comes to location. One is either being in an online community that is of similar minded people. That's like the first step, and it's probably more attainable. The second step is to just fly across the world. Like I flew from London, where I sold everything, moved all the way across to Bali with a one-way ticket, knowing that I will meet people who are like-minded.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. And then once you do that, the whole world opens up for you because you realize, oh, wow, I can connect with anyone. These people are just like me. And yeah, the whole world changes when you do that.
Yeah, I like that. So I think I'm going to end this off with one last question. If your younger self was to stand in front of you right now, what advice would you give to him?
If I was to stand in front of my younger self and give them some advice, maybe when I was 18, I would just say, just realize you're going to make it at some point because you're stubborn enough to keep going until you figure it out, and just realize at some point, if you keep going and you keep focusing, it will happen. It's unreasonable for it not to happen, and everything's going to be all right.
I like that. Thank you, Ebrahim. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time.
Peace, bro.